Greetings, dear listeners. Welcome to today's episode. So, today we're going to talk about disaster preparedness in South Africa. How does the government, communities, and municipalities prepare for disasters? And are those measures they have in place enough to respond to the disasters? South Africa faces increasing levels of disaster risk. It is exposed to a wide range of weather hazards, including droughts, cyclones, and severe storms that can trigger widespread hardship and devastation. So, preparedness for disasters is critical for households, businesses, and communities, but many remain unprepared. As recent disasters serve to highlight the need for individual responsibility, local coordination, and community plans to ensure the ability to respond to and recover from major events, the government has prioritized national preparedness as a goal without developing a system to achieve it and maintain it. Over the past few decades, damage brought on by natural disasters has increased. Disaster management, infrastructure, and human settlements are all impacted by climate change in different ways in South Africa. Infrastructure is damaged because of the severity of the storm events and flooding, which may then cause service delivery to be interrupted. Communities in slum areas, floodplains, and areas with inadequate drainage system are mostly affected by these effects of storm occurrences. Furthermore, communities in rural areas that depend on subsistence farming might not be able to grow the same crops they had in the past because of the changing environment. However, it is important to note that disaster preparedness is an ongoing process and there is always a room for improvement. Some challenges faced by South Africa in disaster preparedness include limited resources, capacity constraints, and vast geographical and socio-economical disparities within the country. South Africa actively participates in regional and international initiatives for disaster management. The government collaborates with neighboring countries, regional organizations, and international agencies to share experiences, knowledge, and resources. This cooperation facilitates mutual assistance during emergencies and enables South Africa to access international support when needed. The government has developed a national disaster management framework that provides a comprehensive approach to disaster management. It outlines the structure, systems, processes for disaster risk reduction, response and recovery, and development. The framework promotes cooperation between different government departments, non-government organizations, and other stakeholders. South Africa has established early warning systems to provide timely information about potential hazards. These systems use various technologies, including weather monitoring stations, satellite imagery, and communication networks to detect and disseminate warning to at-risk communities. Early warning systems help to evacuate people, activate emergency response mechanism, and save lives. But do this communication reach people living in the informal settlements? How do we develop and expand knowledge system in this part of the world? In many cases, early warning systems rely on established communication channels such as television, radio, sirens, text messages, or mobile apps to alert population about potential hazards and emergencies. However, these channels may be limited or absent in informal settlements due to the lack of infrastructure or limited access to technology. In the research conducted in Thulamela municipality in Limpopo about floods that took place there, it was found that in the aftermath of the disaster, several local government agencies significantly contributed to the recovery and restoration efforts. To assist the devastated population, food packs, tents, and other necessities were delivered. The attempt made by the government to assist was short-term and lasted for that period, and the reason is that they gave little regard to climate readiness, prevention, and risk control. Instead, they focus largely on the reconstruction and restoration operations. The municipality lacked the ability to put a long-term strategic planning into action. According to the official disaster risk experts, prevention and preventative measures were not properly undertaken before the occurrence. And another example would be the earthquake that took place in Johannesburg. Some houses were cracked. Had that earthquake lasted longer, thousands of people would be homeless. Again, this just shows that South Africa is not prepared enough for disasters. So what does that mean for the planners? who is to blame in this case? What are we doing wrong? What can be done to better the situation? Please welcome Mr. Jackson Sebola, who is a professional urban planner, who's going to share some knowledge with us about disaster preparedness in South Africa.
Okay, so the first question is, do you think is South Africa well prepared and equipped for flood mitigations and response? And if yes, why? And if no, why not?
No, I think South Africa is not prepared for flood disasters and does not have mitigation processes set into place. The reason being that South Africa wants to react to issues and not be proactive. And we want to work in silos, basically. So that's the answer to my question. To your question.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. Okay, and the second one is, in your opinion, since you're saying South Africa is not well prepared, what can be done to better the response to flood?
What can be done is for South Africa to be proactive, to anticipate these matters before they happen. They've happened before. So we need to anticipate and be ready and prepared for them to happen. Second of all, there needs to be an approach that speaks to many stakeholders and affected stakeholders, the agricultural sector, academic sector, all these municipal, national policy, and all those other aspects. They need to be synchronized and be dealt with in order to respond adequately to these issues as they come. So that's my opinion, as your question is asked.
Okay, thank you so much for that, and I agree. So what do you think? What do you think does the municipalities of South Africa face when trying to respond to disasters?
The municipalities face challenges of funding. They don't have adequate funding. That is in the aspect. The second aspect is infrastructure. The infrastructure is old and non-functional. They also don't have manpower or adequate manpower to deal with these issues. So, and they are left to hang it and dry, whereas province needs to play a part, nationals needs to play a part, and they need to work together. So those are the challenges that are faced. Over and above that is society that is not prepared for these disasters. You see, a disaster is something that we need to also socially prepare for, not just the municipality as the administrator, but the citizens as the consumers of these spaces, so that they're well prepared and know contingency plans that will take place should such disasters happen.
Okay. So over the past few decades, damage brought on by natural disasters has increased. Disaster management, infrastructure, and human settlements are all impacted by the climate change in South Africa in different ways. And infrastructure is damaged because of the severity of the storm events and flooding, which may cause service delivery to be interrupted. So who do you think is to blame in this case? Do you blame the planners or the people responsible for making sure that we are prepared in South Africa, or there is lack of skills? Because you have mentioned that funding is the problem. So who do you think is to blame in this case?
Everybody is to blame, honestly, because now it's not just about particular people or particular organizations and structures, but also a period of time. You see, this infrastructure is also failing because of it being old and outdated. And when it was introduced or established, it was not established for the pressures that it has. It was established for the minority. But now the majority have access to these spaces, and now the infrastructure itself is giving up. So, to answer my question, or to answer your question, sorry, is that everybody is to blame in the sense that administratively is the municipality, government needs to take responsibility, people need to also take responsibility. So we can't particularly blame an individual, but the responsibility lies with local government as the what can I say, as the manager of these spaces at a local level. So local government needs to take into consideration fixing these spaces. But how can it do that when it does not have funding, when it does not have a budget?
Yeah.
So it's difficult to actually point fingers.
Okay, I get you. Thank you for the response. Okay, so the second last question is, can you describe any specific challenges that you have faced in disaster response and recovery efforts, and how did you address them?
That I have faced personally?
Yes.
It was during when there was no water. There was a time when there was no water here in Joburg, in the region that I'm in. I think it was something about the reservoirs, and there was a drought. So, it was just a matter of buying water, filling water to drink, buying water to drink, filling these mafagi for water to bath and to do other things. That is the one disaster that I came across. The second one is the flooding. It did not affect where I stay particularly, but affected the roads that I used to commute to work and back. So yeah, due to those floods, I could not go to work. I mean, it was bad, and I had to wait until the flood subside. So those are the two disasters that I've come across, and that is how I dealt with them.
Okay. Thank you so much. So the last question is, how would you collaborate with other agencies, organizations, and stakeholders during disaster response and recovery efforts? And can you share any lessons learned from the past disasters that have shaped your approach to disaster preparedness, response, and recovery?
My approach as a town planner would be that of contributing the town planning perspective or the aspect in producing solutions for these spaces. And then what I have learned is that we need to really rethink or re-understand our spaces, honestly, because we cannot, some disasters will get so detrimental that we won't be able to bounce back easily. And what we've been getting away with, this thing of a disaster happens, then we quickly, react, and then it happens, then we react each and every year. It's going to get to a point where it will be very difficult. You remember what happened in Cape Town? It took a while for them to recover. And you see what happened in Durban. It took a while for them to recover. So let's not wait until we get to those situations where it's difficult to recover. Let us start now. Reinforce these bridges that need to be reinforced. Pave the pavings properly that need to be paved. Overhaul the infrastructure, the water drainage systems that need to be overhauled, so that when the time comes, and then also have these reservoirs, both these cement reservoirs and natural reservoirs, so that when these disasters come, whether it be floods or whether it be drought, that we are prepared. We also need to upskill the people that need to be dealing with these matters, so that they are well prepared. We need to have a special task force, which I think the government proposed lately, this year or last year, late last year, I think it was this year, where they, during the state of disaster, announcement. They had a special task team that will be dealing with this. That's a good start, and that's what needs to be done going forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for answering my questions and agreeing to this meeting. You helped me.
And thank you to the listeners. Today's session was very informative, and I hope you enjoyed the session. Please stay tuned for the next episode.